Oh yes, Gungrave, a series of video games and an anime that follows the life, or rather death, of Brandon Heath, or as he's better known as, Beyond the Grave.
I love this series so much that it's been sitting at one of my favorites for a very long time. Right around the time I finished watching Trigun and Berserk. Not the, fucked up Idolmaster fever dream, of course. Well, and after that, my collection of Gungrave stuff just kind of snowballed to the point where it sounds like a good idea to forego normal human being necessities just for the sake of buying just one more trinket for my collection.
For years I've been trying to get people into Gungrave to no real avail. And now that there's one new Gungrave out and another on the horizon, I say now is as good a time as any to take a look at the Gungrave series. So now, without further ado, let us take a look at Gungrave 1 and its anime adaptation.
Gungrave is a third-person shooter slash hack-and-slash action game made for the PS2 in 2002, developed by Red Entertainment and published by Sega. Well, at least in the States. The game's story and characters were both created by Japanese manga artist Yasuhiro Nyth, which you may know as the creator of Trigun. And if you know anything about that, then you know that one of his largest inspirations lie with spaghetti westerns and other such American Wild West media, which definitely shows through his storytelling and character designs. Gungrave, of course, wasn't his first foray into gaming. That would be his first manga, which is based off of Samurai Spirits, which is an arcade game made by Arc System Works. Shortly after his experience of adapting the story, Nyth went on to create his own original series, Trigun. Which blew up in popularity in both Japan and the West, especially thanks to the successful anime adaptation. So, with the experience of working on Trigun, and with his interest in the gaming industry, Nyth decided to become a part of the game-making process. He decided that pitching the idea of Gungrave to Sega and Red Entertainment would be a good idea. This was an offer that Sega could not refuse, mostly because of Nyth's popularity in the worldwide market. This led them to take him up on his pitch of the series and start development on the first game in the franchise, Gungrave. The character designs are done by Yasuhiro Nyth himself, and if you know anything about him and his art, is that it's hyper-detailed and unique with a very strong Western inspiration, and also tends to have rough and sharp edges that come together in an interesting yet aesthetically pleasing way. His vision for Gungrave was to mix both a mafia-like aesthetic a la Godfather with a steampunk version of the Wild West much akin to Trigun. Grave is shown wearing a futuristic cowboy attire with plenty of crosses on it, in a symbolic way to represent how he is undead. The other characters follow the trend of mafioso fashion with Wild West aesthetic to them, creating a truly unique vision for the franchise. In contrast with the character designs, enemy designs are made to be more monstrous, showing many elements of surgery and body horror, a certain design tendency that Nyth is known for. But, despite all of the influence Nyth had on the series, of course, he wasn't the only artist. Kosuke Fujishima, of Sakura Wars fame, did the mechanical art, such as Grave's coffin gun bazooka thing. His work is also prevalent throughout the world design of the game. Though the levels can be visually boring at times, the general style and design of the world is able to truly shine during others. The art of this game almost carries the game alone, where both Nyth and Fujishima's art come together to produce some of the most interesting looking art on the entire console, and I'm not just the only one who thinks so. This game was almost universally praised for its art style, if nothing else. The music is also another thing to write home about, and let me tell you, it is on par with the art style in terms of pure awesomeness. The music is composed by the always excellent Tsuneo Imahori, who is known for his incredible work on the music of Trigun, Turn A Gundam, Hajime no Ippo, and of course the universally praised Cowboy Bebop. Nyth and Red knew they had their guy, especially after his previous work on the Trigun series. Imahori uses a mixture of jazz and rock to make the score of Gungrave as exciting and adrenaline-pumping as it could possibly be. The music really puts you in the action of the game, making you feel every bullet and flashing light in the moonlit streets of the world that Grave inhabits. The game's art style alone could be the main reason to give Gungrave a chance, but the music itself is also just so awesome that they might as well both carry the experience. Both of the elements, music and visuals, go both hand in hand, making the game feel like a true fantasia of violence and badassery, the likes of which you probably have never seen before, from the solo-heavy opening song letting you know that you're in for a killer time, to the equally adrenaline-pumping jam of Cerberus, to the more melancholy and slow sound of Here Comes the Rain. The music just flows so well together, and eventually the artwork and the music become so synonymous in your mind that each time you look at a piece of Gungrave artwork, the music just starts jamming in your head and vice versa. So not only is Gungrave one of the most visually interesting games on the PS2, but also one of the most exciting games to listen to on the platform. And I mean, yeah, it's a cool game and all, I mean, don't get me wrong, but I mean, alright, fine, whatever. Let's just discuss the gameplay. Now look, I've tried to praise this game as much as I could for as long as I could, but the gameplay is just something that cannot be ignored. As I previously stated, Gungrave is a third-person shooter hack-and-slash hybrid thing, yet the game is comprised of almost entirely shooting with more shooting plus shooting and
Did I mention shooting?
There's no real puzzles, no environmental challenge here, except for like running away sometimes. Yeah, it's just shooting and nothing else. If you play this game for more than a minute, you've pretty much played the whole thing. You'll know that it feels very much like an arcade game, and that's what I think they were trying to go for, at least. I mean, even at the beginning of each stage, it tells you to kick their ass, like you just put 50 cents into an arcade cabinet and just started your sporadic downfall into begging your mom to give you more change. While I do appreciate the arcade feel this game is going for, it definitely takes a toll on the overall gameplay. Gungrave feels more like a 50-cent experience, at least in terms of gameplay, rather than a full-priced game experience, especially since the game's playtime is roughly about 3 hours. This is honestly very unfortunate because as soon as you start to ignore the monotonous gameplay and get into the rhythm of the music and the artwork, the game's over. Just like that, leaving you feel very unsatisfied, and the gameplay just boils down to mostly plowing through hordes and hordes of enemies as you walk through sometimes visually appealing, sometimes boring looking locations. The level progression of the game revolves around you defeating enemies to progress further throughout the map, as you used ranged shooting with Grave's arsenal of weapons, like the Cerberus dual-handed guns and his coffin, which serves as both a machine gun and a bazooka, as well as the means of delivering close quarters combat. It's an everything weapon, basically. Both of Grave's main weapons are actually based on Trigun's character's weapons, the dual handguns obviously being Vash the Stampede's dual handguns, and the coffin being inspired by Nicholas D. Wolfwood's crossgun. Now, going back to the arcade theme this game has, each level ends with a score screen, where you get more score based off of your varied combat styles. Pulling off varied combat doesn't only affect your score, however, but it also fills your combo meter, which is that skull on the top of the screen. When you fill that skull's beat meter, you get the ability to activate a huge devastating combo attack that affects all the enemies on the screen. Grave also has a shield to go along with his HP, which absorbs more damage before your HP gets affected. It is actually kinda hard to take damage in this game, but getting overwhelmed is always around the corner if you're not careful. But if you find yourself easily overwhelmed with overabundant enemies, you'll be glad to know that this game actually has a few interesting cutscenes sprinkled throughout the game that slowly piece the mysterious story of Grave together. Oh yeah, speaking of the story, the game follows a character of the name Brandon Heat, who is a high-ranking member of the Mafia called Millennium. After some mishap happened to him, he ended up getting murdered in cold blood. Now 15 years after his death, he is resurrected by the mysterious Dr. T as an undead killing machine, under the new alias Beyond the Grave, in order to protect a young girl named Mika, who is being hunted down by the Millennium group to be killed, making it your duty to tear down the organization that you once served to the ground to protect a girl that you don't even know. But since Grave's brain has been rotting for the last 15 years, his memory isn't exactly what it used to be, so throughout the course of the game you will encounter old Mafia buddies as your memories slowly start to piece back together. And as you reach the game's conclusion to deal the final blow on the final boss, the memories become abundantly clear. Well, at least for Grave. The story is kind of minimal here and leaves a lot to be desired, and that's exactly why they went on to create an anime, which is almost entirely due to the visuals and soundtrack alone.
First, we're going to take a look at the North American box art of the game. As you can see here, it comes with a cool yellow box art that's rather striking in the PS2 library. On the back, it contains more of Yasuhiro Naito's art and a few shots of the game on the back. It also states the line, "Kick their ass," which I'm surprised they'd put that on a retail game. We open up the inside to reveal a standard black disc just with the game's logo on it. We also have a Sega product registration right here with Sonic on it, and the always fun to look at game manual. The game manual contains the usual guides, controls, settings, character profiles, and notes section. It's a pretty cool standard edition of the game. Now, here on Rtyuiope's Gameroom, I tend to only collect North American versions of games, but today I bring you the Japanese limited edition of Gungrave. As you can see here, it comes in a cardboard box, which appears to be bound by belts of some sort. On the back, it has a ton of screens of the game, which is pretty cool. Now for the game itself, it comes in the cool white Japanese box art, which is very different from the North American box art. However, it's still art done by Yasuhiro Naito. But on the back, it's pretty much what was on the back of the Japanese limited editions. But of course, this game has a reversible cover, unlike the North American version. But here it seems to be promoting some sort of anniversary, I assume for Red Entertainment. Inside the box, we got a different disc art, which looks a lot better in my opinion, and a guidebook. The guidebook of the Japanese edition is actually colored, unlike the American version, and it comes with a cool little poster of Graves in it. The box set also comes with a cool collection of postcards. Also with the collector's edition, you get this cool Grave action figure. Just comes with Grave himself, his guns, and his gun coffin. It's actually rather small, only being about that big, but it's still a cool thing to own nonetheless. Here we have the Gungrave anime complete series. Here you see cool art done by Yasuhiro Naito for the cover, and on the back we see some in-anime screenshots. Now when you remove the slipcover, it's the same art on the inside, which is rather unfortunate. They could have put something different there, but you know. When you open it, it's rather unremarkable, just containing an insert for Funimation and all the discs for the anime. I also happen to own 2 volumes of the anime before I bought the complete edition.
The Gungrave anime serves as both a prequel and a retelling of the first Gungrave game. It tells you how Brandon Heat and his friend Harry McDowell rose from being lowly street rats to being at the top of the food chain for a mafia organization. I actually watched this anime before I played the game, and honestly, not gonna lie, it's probably one of the best anime shows ever. It has plenty of sympathetic characters that help you get sucked into the world that the anime paints for you. The designs are once again done by Naito, and Imahori returns to compose the music, with some tracks done by the Japanese funk group Scooby-Doo. The music in the anime, while still jazzy, has less rock influence in it, as it tries to paint a picture of what life was like when it was simpler for Brandon by using a lot of acoustic sounds. The anime also provides a lot more details while clarifying on some others to make the story of the game make a little bit more sense, which is until you get to the retelling portion of the anime. As I said, the anime is a prequel until about episode 20, where the last 5 episodes retell the game's story, and boy, do they change things up. The general idea is still there, but a lot of details are changed, like Mika falling in love with Grave, and the final confrontation with the main antagonist is completely rewritten to be extremely mellow by comparison to the game's ending. And the way the anime ends suggests that this is the end of Grave's story for good. But of course that's not how it happens at all in the game. I like both stories equally, with the game ending on a note that evil is still out there and Grave is the one who will bring judgment to the sinners, while the anime paints Grave as just as bad of a sinner as the main antagonist, meeting his end with him. I like the message of both versions equally, so I can't really pick, so it just comes down to what kind of message you prefer from the story. Now my final thoughts on the Gungrave game. Putting my bias aside, the game is definitely a visual and musical spectacle. but you aren't going to be missing much in terms of gameplay, so if you're strapped on cash, I can definitely just recommend watching the anime, which are available on these services. Gungrave used to be a cheap game, but with the release of the new games and revitalized interest in the property, the prices of course have gone up. But if you have the extra cash, I think it's definitely worth picking up. So, Gungrave for the PS2, I definitely say, check it out. As for the anime, I definitely recommend the same. Gungrave is just one of those unique and niche properties that I just love so much, that go almost completely under everyone's radar. But Gungrave as a multimedia project is just too good to let fade into obscurity. And while the future of the series isn't looking too, great? I mean, the original series will always still exist.
Now that I've finished talking about the first game and its anime adaptation, this isn't the end of Grave's adventures, for there is one more game in the series, and it's more bonkers than the first and perhaps even more beloved. So, until next time, this is Rtyuiope from Rtyuiope's Gameroom, signing out.